Before the chilling silence that fell over Susan Powell's life, she was known as a vibrant and loving mother, a dedicated friend, and a caring daughter. Born Susan Marie Cox on October 16, 1981, she grew into a woman admired for her kindness and her dedication to her family. Susan's life in West Valley City, Utah, was one woven with the threads of normalcy and warmth, surrounded by the laughter of her two young sons and the company of her husband, Josh Powell. Her disappearance on December 7, 2009, sent shockwaves through her community and beyond, leaving a void that her loved ones struggled to comprehend. The days leading up to her vanishing were seemingly unremarkable, filled with the routines of work and family life. Yet, beneath the surface, there were undercurrents that hinted at a life more complex than most knew. Susan's case, still unsolved, has haunted not only those who knew her but also those who have come to know her story through the relentless efforts of her family to find answers. The mystery of her disappearance, the tragic and horrific death of her sons, and the eventual suicide of her husband have left many questions unanswered, making her story one of the most disturbing and heart-wrenching in recent memory. As we delve into the life Susan led before her disappearance, we remember her not just as a missing person from the cold case files, but as a woman whose life was abruptly and inexplicably cut short. Her story is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring agony of those left behind. On a cold December day in 2009, the quiet of West Valley City, Utah, was shattered by the mysterious disappearance of Susan Powell. A beloved mother and wife, Susan's sudden vanishing left her community and family in a state of shock and confusion. Timeline of events: December 6, 2009, Susan Powell was last seen at church with her family. December 7, 2009, Susan's husband, Josh Powell, claimed he took their two young sons on a late-night camping trip in the freezing cold. Susan was reported missing when she didn't show up for work the next day. December 8, 2009, Josh returned home with the boys, allegedly having left Susan sleeping when they left for camping. December 9, 2009, police broke into Susan's home, fearing she was incapacitated inside. They found two box fans blowing on a wet spot on the carpet, but no sign of Susan. The weather on the day of her disappearance was notably cold and harsh, with temperatures dropping significantly, which made the idea of a late-night camping trip seem all the more suspicious. The location, a remote campsite at Simpson Springs, was later searched, but no evidence of Susan's presence was found. As the investigation unfolded, the timeline of Susan's activities and interactions on the day she went missing became a critical piece of the puzzle. Her last known activities included attending church and being at home with her family. The subsequent actions of her husband, particularly the impromptu camping trip, raised immediate red flags for investigators and Susan's loved ones. The disappearance of Susan Powell remains a haunting and perplexing case, with the timeline of that fateful day in December at the heart of the mystery. The disappearance of Susan Powell sent immediate shockwaves through her family and the West Valley City community. The initial reactions were a mix of disbelief, fear, and an urgent call to action. Family and friends' response: Susan's parents and siblings were stunned and immediately feared foul play, considering it highly uncharacteristic of Susan to leave without notice. Friends and colleagues expressed deep concern, noting Susan's devoted nature as a mother and her reliable work ethic. Search efforts: the community quickly rallied, organizing search parties and distributing flyers in the hope of finding any trace of Susan. Law enforcement launched a comprehensive search, starting with Susan's home, the route to her place of work, and the camping site Josh Powell had mentioned. Volunteers canvassed the area, while the police utilized helicopters and ground teams to scour the surrounding landscapes. Community involvement: vigils were held, with many community members coming together to support the Powell family and to keep Susan's story in the public eye. Social media campaigns began, spreading Susan's image and information nationwide in an effort to gather leads. Local businesses contributed resources to the search efforts, and media outlets provided continuous coverage, further mobilizing community support. The initial phase of the search for Susan Powell was marked by a palpable sense of urgency, and a community united in hope and determination. Despite the extensive efforts, no immediate evidence leading to Susan's whereabouts was uncovered, deepening the mystery and the resolve to find answers. Josh Powell's account of the events surrounding Susan Powell's disappearance has been a focal point of the investigation and public speculation. Here's what he claimed. The alibi: Josh Powell stated that on the night Susan disappeared, he took their two young sons on a spontaneous camping trip to Simpson Springs in western Utah, despite the onset of a winter storm. He claimed they left around midnight and returned in the late afternoon the following day. This overnight trip in freezing conditions was considered highly unusual by investigators and those who knew the family. Subsequent actions: upon returning home, Josh was reportedly surprised to find police at his residence and learned of his wife's disappearance. In the days following, Josh's behavior raised eyebrows. He quickly lawyered up, became reticent with law enforcement, and was reluctant to participate in search efforts. He maintained a stoic demeanor in public appearances, showing little emotion about his missing wife, which contrasted sharply with the community's concern. Law enforcement's scrutiny. Investigators found his alibi and actions suspicious, noting inconsistencies in his timeline and a lack of cooperation. The camping trip itself was scrutinized, with searches conducted in the area he claimed to have visited, but no substantial evidence was found to corroborate his story. Josh Powell's narrative of that fateful night has been dissected by both the authorities and the court of public opinion, with many finding his actions and explanations to be perplexing and incriminating. His account remains a critical piece of the puzzle in the ongoing quest to uncover the truth behind Susan Powell's tragic disappearance. The investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance was fraught with challenges from the outset, which complicated the efforts of law enforcement and cast a shadow over the case's progress. Here's a breakdown of the hurdles they faced. Lack of immediate evidence. Initially, there was no clear crime scene. Susan's home did not show signs of forced entry or struggle, leaving investigators with little physical evidence to work with. The only notable discovery was two fans blowing on a wet spot on the carpet, which raised suspicions but did not provide concrete evidence of foul play. Uncooperative key witness. Josh Powell, Susan's husband and the last known person to see her, was uncooperative with police. His reluctance to answer questions and his evasive demeanor hindered the investigation. His alibi, involving a late-night camping trip in freezing temperatures, was met with skepticism, yet without his cooperation, it was difficult to verify or refute his story. Complex family dynamics. The Powell family dynamics added complexity to the case. Reports of tension between Susan and Josh, as well as between Josh and his father, Stephen Powell, introduced a web of interpersonal relationships that investigators had to navigate. Media and public pressure. The case quickly gained media attention, which added pressure to produce results. The intense scrutiny sometimes led to a flood of tips and leads, many of which were not credible, overwhelming investigators. Jurisdictional issues. The investigation spanned multiple jurisdictions, as Susan disappeared in Utah, but there were connections to Washington state where Josh moved with his sons. This required coordination between different law enforcement agencies, which can complicate and slow down investigations. Technological limitations. At the time of Susan's disappearance, digital forensics was still developing. Investigators faced challenges in extracting and interpreting data from computers, phones, and other electronic devices that could hold vital clues. These challenges set the stage for a complex and frustrating investigation, with each obstacle adding another layer of difficulty in the quest to uncover what happened to Susan Powell. As the investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance deepened, law enforcement officials meticulously combed through the Powell residence and other areas of interest, unearthing several pieces of evidence that would become crucial to the case. In the home, forensic analysis revealed traces of Susan's blood on the floor next to a sofa and on some of the tiles, suggesting a possible struggle or injury had occurred. Investigators discovered a handwritten letter from Susan expressing fear for her life and dissatisfaction with her marriage, which she had hidden in a safety deposit box. Two fans were found blowing on a freshly cleaned couch, which raised questions about why Josh would be cleaning the house in the middle of the night. Electronic evidence. Data recovered from the family computer hinted at potential marital discord and financial troubles, providing context to the strained relationship between Susan and Josh. Phone records and emails were scrutinized for any communication that might shed light on Susan's state of mind before her disappearance or any plans she might have had. The camping trip. The rental car Josh used after the disappearance racked up hundreds of miles, but he couldn't account for where he went, which raised suspicions about possible locations he may have visited to dispose of evidence. Camping equipment and a generator were found in the family minivan, but no conclusive evidence linked the items to Susan's disappearance. Stephen Powell's home. During a search of Josh's father's home in Washington, investigators found extensive voyeuristic videos and images, including some of Susan, which led to separate charges against Stephen Powell and added a disturbing dimension to the case. Each piece of evidence added to a mosaic of suspicion but did not conclusively solve the mystery of what happened to Susan Powell. The evidence painted a picture of potential domestic turmoil and suggested that the answer to Susan's disappearance lay close to home. However, without a body or a confession, the case remained open, with these clues serving as silent testaments to the tragedy that had unfolded. The Susan Powell case quickly captured the attention of the media, both local and national, leading to a media frenzy that had significant impacts on public perception and the investigation. Early coverage. Local news outlets began covering the story almost immediately after Susan's disappearance, with national media picking up the story as the search efforts expanded and Josh Powell's behavior came under scrutiny. The case featured on major television programs like Dateline NBC and Good Morning America, which brought national attention and pressure on the investigation. Public perception. The media portrayal of Josh Powell was often negative, focusing on his uncooperative nature with law enforcement and his decision to take his children on a late-night camping trip in freezing conditions, which he claimed to have done around the time Susan disappeared. Susan's disappearance became a cause célèbre, with the public closely following each development and forming their own theories about what happened to her. Impact on the investigation. The intense media spotlight sometimes hindered the investigation, with law enforcement officials expressing frustration over the spread of misinformation and the circus-like atmosphere that the media attention sometimes created. However, the media also played a crucial role in keeping the case in the public eye, encouraging potential witnesses to come forward and maintaining pressure on the authorities to continue their efforts. Social media and online communities. The rise of social media platforms and online crime forums allowed for widespread public engagement with the case. Armchair detectives and concerned citizens alike discussed theories, shared information, and kept Susan's story alive. The Powell family even used social media to their advantage, with Josh and his family members posting videos and statements online in an attempt to control the narrative and proclaim Josh's innocence. The media's role in the Susan Powell case was a double-edged sword. While it sometimes created challenges for the investigation, it also ensured that Susan's story reached a wide audience and remained a priority for law enforcement. The case's presence in the media spotlight exemplified the modern intersection of crime, public interest, and the 24-hour news cycle. In the heart-wrenching saga of Susan Powell's disappearance, her parents, Judith and Charles Cox, have been pillars of strength and relentless advocates. They have faced unimaginable tragedy with the loss of Susan and later, the horrific death of their grandsons at the hands of their son-in-law, Josh Powell. The Cox's involvement in the search for Susan was profound. They were instrumental in keeping the case in the public eye and worked tirelessly to maintain media attention, hoping it would lead to answers. Their home became a hub for volunteers and a sanctuary for those who wanted to help in any way they could. But their role extended far beyond the search efforts. They faced a legal battle with the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services, which they accused of negligence in the deaths of their grandsons, Charlie and Braden. In a landmark decision, a jury awarded them a staggering $98.5 million, recognizing the profound pain and suffering the Cox family endured. This verdict, although a small solace, was a testament to their unwavering commitment to justice for Susan and her children. The Cox family's journey has been marked by resilience in the face of adversity. They have become advocates for victims' rights, using their voice to push for changes in laws and policies to protect others from similar fates. Their love for Susan and her boys remains a beacon of hope that one day there will be closure and justice for Susan Powell. The case of Susan Powell took a harrowing and tragic turn that left the community and nation in shock. On February 5, 2012, Josh Powell, the husband of the missing Susan Powell, committed a heinous act of violence that extinguished the lives of his two young sons and himself. On that fateful day, a social worker brought Braden and Charlie Powell for a supervised visit to their father's home in Graham, Washington. However, as soon as the children entered the house, Josh Powell locked the social worker out. Moments later, the home exploded into flames, a deliberate act set by Josh using cans of gasoline he had spread throughout the house. The authorities later determined that the boys had been attacked by their father with a hatchet before the fire was set, a detail that added an even more gruesome layer to the already horrific event. This murder-suicide by Josh Powell not only ended the lives of two innocent children but also dashed any lingering hopes of finding Susan Powell alive. It was a stark and brutal reminder of the depths of darkness that can reside within a person, and it left the community and the nation grappling with many unanswered questions. The aftermath of this tragedy saw an outpouring of grief and anger. The house at 8119 to 189th Street Court East became a grim landmark, a place where such unspeakable acts were carried out. The echoes of this tragedy reverberated far beyond the quiet town of Graham, serving as a painful reminder of the potential outcomes of domestic cases that turn deadly. The case of Susan Powell remains a haunting tale, with her disappearance still unsolved and the horrific end of her children a somber chapter in the annals of true crime. The impact of this event continues to be felt, and the memories of Braden and Charlie, innocent victims of a domestic horror, are preserved in the hearts of all who mourn them. In the years following Susan Powell's disappearance, the search for answers has not ceased. While the West Valley City Police officially closed their active investigation in May 2013, believing that Joshua Powell murdered Susan with the assistance of his brother Michael, who later took his own life, the case remains a haunting enigma. Despite the closure of the active investigation, there have been murmurs of ongoing federal involvement. The family's attorney has indicated that federal authorities continue to review Susan's case, although this was met with denials from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Salt Lake City. The tragedy that befell Susan and her sons has left a void that ongoing investigations seek to fill, with law enforcement and family holding on to hope that new leads or advancements in technology may one day provide the closure that has eluded them for so long. The persistence of Susan's family, coupled with the undying efforts of law enforcement, ensures that her story is far from over and the quest for truth remains as vital as ever. The disappearance of Susan Powell has captivated the public and online communities, sparking widespread engagement and a plethora of theories. The case has been dissected in online forums, true crime podcasts, and social media groups, where armchair detectives and concerned citizens alike have gathered to share information, speculate on possible scenarios, and offer support to Susan's family. Online sleuths have pored over every detail released to the public, sometimes uncovering overlooked aspects or proposing new angles that have prompted further consideration. Theories ranging from Susan starting a new life elsewhere to falling victim to someone she knew continue to circulate, keeping her story in the digital limelight. The Powell case has also seen significant attention on platforms like Reddit and YouTube, where users have created extensive threads and video content analyzing the available evidence. This online engagement has not only kept Susan's memory alive but also ensured a steady flow of tips and potential leads, some of which have been credible enough to warrant attention from authorities. The digital age has thus played a pivotal role in this case, demonstrating the power of collective effort in the pursuit of truth and justice. The hope is that this continued engagement will one day lead to the breakthrough needed to solve the mystery of Susan Powell's disappearance. Stephen Powell, the father of Josh Powell, became a figure of significant interest in the investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance. His involvement took a dark turn when evidence surfaced that he had an unhealthy obsession with Susan, including taking secret recordings and photographs of her without her consent. This disturbing behavior cast a shadow of suspicion over him, leading many to wonder about his potential involvement in her disappearance. Stephen's home was searched by police, and they discovered extensive voyeuristic material, which led to his arrest on charges unrelated to Susan's case. However, the scrutiny did not provide the breakthrough needed to solve the mystery of Susan's whereabouts. Despite this, Stephen Powell's actions and possible knowledge of the events surrounding Susan's disappearance remain a topic of discussion and speculation. The aftermath of Susan Powell's disappearance saw a series of legal proceedings that added layers of complexity to the tragic narrative. Custody battles ensued over Susan and Josh's two sons, with Susan's parents fighting for guardianship against Josh Powell, who was a person of interest in Susan's disappearance. The courts eventually granted Susan's parents temporary custody of the children, citing concerns about the children's safety with Josh. In addition to the custody disputes, Stephen Powell faced legal action for the voyeuristic material found in his possession, which led to a conviction and imprisonment. However, no charges directly related to Susan's disappearance have been successfully brought against anyone, leaving the legal chapter of this case frustratingly open. As forensic technology advances, there remains hope that new evidence in Susan Powell's case may be uncovered or that existing evidence may be re-examined with fresh eyes. Techniques such as touch DNA, digital forensic analysis, and enhanced imaging could potentially reveal clues previously undetectable. Investigators have expressed interest in applying these new technologies to the Powell case, suggesting that items collected during the initial searches could be reanalyzed. The hope is that even the smallest trace of forensic evidence could provide the missing link needed to piece together what happened to Susan and finally bring closure to her family and the community. Throughout the years, the case of Susan Powell has seen various psychics and individuals with alternative methods come forward, claiming to have insights or leads into her disappearance. While law enforcement typically relies on tangible evidence and traditional investigative techniques, the desperation for answers has led some family members and the public to explore these unconventional avenues. Psychics have provided varied and often conflicting information, which has not yet led to a resolution of the case. The use of these alternative methods reflects the enduring hope that any means possible should be explored to find Susan and bring closure to her loved ones. The disappearance of Susan Powell sent shockwaves through her community, leaving a lasting impact on those who knew her and even those who didn't. The case has been a haunting presence in the town, a constant reminder of the fragility of safety and the mystery that can surround a sudden disappearance. It has galvanized community members to come together in search efforts and vigils, keeping Susan's memory alive and the quest for answers ongoing. The broader public has also been deeply affected, as the case has been featured in numerous media outlets, documentaries, and true crime discussions, drawing widespread attention and empathy. Susan Powell's case bears similarities to other missing persons cases, where the spouse is often looked at as a person of interest, and domestic issues are scrutinized. The unresolved disappearance of Susan Powell has exerted an immeasurable emotional toll on her family, friends, and all who have followed the case. The enduring absence of closure has left a wound that time has struggled to heal. Her parents, once hopeful, have faced the reality of years without answers, grappling with the loss of not only their daughter but also their grandsons in such a tragic turn of events. Friends and community members carry the burden of her memory, often questioning if more could have been done. The emotional toll is a stark reminder of the human cost behind every missing person's headline. As of now, the case of Susan Powell remains unsolved, with law enforcement and private investigators continuing to seek leads that could unravel the mystery of her disappearance. Despite the passing of years, the case is not forgotten, with dedicated detectives periodically reviewing files and evidence, hoping that advancements in technology or new information will provide the breakthrough needed. The case remains in the public consciousness, with ongoing discussions in various media and true crime forums keeping the search for truth alive. Susan Powell's case has become a somber icon in the true crime community, a narrative that is as compelling as it is heartbreaking. It serves as a reminder of the complexities of domestic life, the challenges faced by law enforcement, and the profound impact a single case can have on a community. As we reflect on Susan's story, we are reminded of the importance of vigilance, support, and the continued pursuit of justice. If you have any information, no matter how small it may seem, you are encouraged to come forward. It could be the key to unlocking the answers that so many have been searching for. As we close this chapter on the mysterious case of Susan Powell, I turn to you, the viewers. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you see any details that might have been overlooked? How do you think advancements in technology might aid in cases like Susan's? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Remember, it's only through collective effort and shared information that cold cases like Susan's can hope to find resolution.